Hey, horror fans! Once again, it is me, the Horror Mizamani GS. Continuing on with the 31 Days of Horror, it is time for me to talk about one of my favorite vampire film series, Underworld. And there goes that glare again. Now, Underworld is a series of dark fantasy action horror films that was created by Les Wiseman, Kevin Drew, and Danny McBride that follows the characters caught up in a war between vampires and werewolves called Lycan. Most of the movie stars Kate Beckinsale as the protagonist, Celine. Somehow she's based upon the Marvel's Comics character of the same name. I really didn't know that they were doing that. The first film, Underworld, was released in 2003, which introduced Celine, an elite vampire warrior who defies the orders, and Michael Covin, a human who gets caught up in the war. Then we have the second film, Underworld Evolution. The third film, Underworld Lies of the Rankins in 2009. That's actually a prequel to the series, which chronicles the origins of the vampire Lycan War. The fourth film, Underworld Awakening, came down in 2012, is a prequel to Underworld Evolution. That's when the humans finally discovered the existence of the vampire Lycan species, and they try to eradicate both species. And in the final film so far, Blood Were Underworld. That was released in 2016. Now, most of the films have received mixed and negative reviews, but it has a strong fan base, such as myself. The films in total have grossed over, might say, $540 million against a $207 million budget. So the films have made money. Now, what I like about this series is because they've taken one of my favorite supernatural creatures, vampires and werewolves, and flipped the script on them. Because in this film series, or in this universe, is what you might as well call it, they are not actually supernatural creatures. They're actually two separate species, something like how humans are known as Homo sapiens, where I think it's Alexander Corvinus. He is the main guy. We learned this in the first movie, Underworld, about how Alexander Corvinus, he was a Hungarian warlord. I think probably might be in the 15th or 16th century. Plague ravaged his home, his village where he was living at, but somehow his body was able to mold the pathogen to his benefit, and he, in sense, became the first immortal. He eventually had three sons. He had Marcus. He was bitten by a bat, eventually became vampires, and William. He was bitten by a wolf, became werewolves, and then he had a human son. Now, the human son, his thing in the disease lay dormant, but he still had that pathogen in his body, but it lay dormant because he didn't get nothing happened to him. But eventually, this is what happened. This is how the whole thing between vampires and werewolves are created. It's not that they're not supernatural creatures. It's just the fact they were have this some type of genetic benefactor, sort of like how mutants in the Marvel's universe are. They have this type of X genes in their DNA and gives them special abilities. So that's how vampires and werewolves are in this universe. Now they do have some. They do actually have the same supernatural abilities that we've seen in other movies. They have superhuman strength. They have definitely have fast healing, regenerative abilities depending upon how bad their bodies are. Obviously, vampires still have to drink blood because they have the bloodlust. The same with werewolves too. In this particular one, they have a bloodlust as well. Werewolves, they're very allergic to silver. If they have too much silver in their body, they can't regenerate, and that's what causes them to die. So they basically have the same type of weaknesses, but vampires in the Underworld series, they're not afraid of religious objects. So if you can hold the cross or any of them, nothing's going to happen to them. But unfortunately, they can't stand in the sunlight neither. So sunlight will kill them. So while they might not have some of the religious aspects in as far as vampires are concerned in the Underworld series, they still die by sunlight. When I first saw the trailer to Underworld, I really didn't think much about it. I knew it had to do something with vampires, just about how the trailer was and werewolves, but I wasn't expecting much out of it. It did look slick. It had a very slick production, so you really got to get the cinematographer well. It has a very gothic atmosphere, and I truly love that. Remind me of all the Hammer films. Obviously, we have Kate Beckinsale. She looks hot in her skin type leather uniform out there. Had some very nice action scenes, and I truly did love the story. Now, I'll be basically talking about most of the scenes or the basic of the plot of the story. I might have some spoilers here or there because I'm pretty sure most of you guys have seen the Underworld series. I believe if it's available on Blu-ray and 4K. I have the DVD right here. I'm see if I can pick up the 4K. But obviously, it basically shows Celine and the rest of the vampires are trying to find some of the lichens or werewolves there. They're known as death dealers. They're sort of the warriors that go out there and try to hunt and eradicate the lichens. While spotting some two lichens, they find out that they're after this human, and we later find out that his name is Michael Corvin. Now we don't know what the lichens want him for, but Celine suspects that. Also, we see Craven and the vampire ruling class, and he's not really interested in lichens. We learn more about Craven and the rest of the vampires, and we also find out that Victor was left Craven in charge, much to the disgust of Celine. Now, as the movie goes along, we found out that Lucien, he is the leading the werewolves. He's still alive. He's supposed to have been killed, but obviously he's still alive. But for some reason, he wants Michael Corbin for some unknown reason, as we learn later on about the film. And then we find out that Celine decides to intervene when they try to capture Michael again, and she takes him. Pretty interesting fight that they have too. Now the acting is it's serviceable. I think Kate Beckinsale she actually does a good job as Celine. Obviously she's more into what she is because we find out later on that she believes that the Lycans killed her family. As what that's what Victor told her. Obviously, we learn later on that's not the truth when it comes to Celine and some other secrets she finds out later on throughout the series. We find out that Michael Corbin is a descendant of Alexander Corvinus, and that's the reason why Lucien wants him because he feels as though if he can combine the two species, that he'll become something better, so that way he can actually go ahead and defeat Victor and the rest of the vampire clan. We also find out that Craven is a two-time scumbag. He's actually in league with Lucien, as we find out that Lucien didn't die, and he wants to take over everything. Can't trust anybody, not even vampires. Obviously, things pick up a bit when Victor is brought back. I like how they do with the vampire elders, as they actually go into hibernation while one is awake and the two are asleep, and then Celine wakes up Victor, kind of ahead of schedule, as we find out later on. And I simply love Bill Knightley's performance as Victor. He really ups the ante by the time he comes into the scene, supposedly the strongest and mightiest of the all vampires, and he just actually just oozes machismo when he's on the screen, and he's not putting up anything when it comes to lichens, and we know a lot why later on. Again, I really have to get credit to cinematographer. I think his name is Tony Price Roberts. He did a fantastic job of how this film looks. Like I said, it's real slick, gothic feel, especially when we're in the dungeons or whatever the sewers where the lichens live. It's really dark and dingy. And while the vampires and the castles that they live in or the vast mansion that they have is real elegant, pricey, but it still has that gothic, dark atmosphere. I truly love how he made this film. So you really got to give him credit. Also, got to give credit to the practical effects and the CGI effects. I love how the werewolves transform. I really would like to see more practical transformations, but because obviously I prefer that. But they do a pretty good job, so it doesn't look kind of fake as we see in other werewolf films. I really like that. I love the battle scenes that they have between the Lycans and the werewolves. It's a fantastic film, and that's one reason why I truly love the series. No, obviously you really have to like the Romeo and Juliet type of romance that Celine and Michael have, and it's kind of like that because obviously we find out that Victor wants nothing to do with the Lycans, and we find out why because later on, his daughter wind up having a child that was part Lycan, and he want nothing to do with it. As obviously, Craven tells her it wasn't the Lycans that killed your family; it was Victor. He was the one that killed your family. He does sort of like a Reader's Digest version of trying to explain to Celine, but we'll learn later on in the series go the real reason why he killed Celine's family and not the Lycans. Because obviously, because Celine, if you look at it, we'll find out more in the third film, reminded him of his daughter who he condemned to death because obviously she was pregnant with, she actually had sex with a Lycan, and we'll learn about that more in the third movie. So, like I said before, this is one of the reasons I truly love the Underworld series is because of how well it's directed, the elegance and the slickness and the gothic feel of all the films have this type of gothic feel. I mean, even Blood Wars, which I believe is one of the weakest ones in in the series, but it still has that gothic slick feel. And you really got to give everyone credit for how they make this film, how make this film. And I'm hoping that we get to see more of this world. I've always stated that if they're not going to make any movies, they should try to make this into a TV show. There's a lot of mythology, a lot of stories there they can go with, especially on a TV show, if they decide to make this into a TV. But hey, if you want to make another movie, you can make another movie. And it's not like these films aren't making money. They're not blockbusters, but definitely when you can make the type of money you can make on this film, then you can try to make another film. It depends. Kate Beckinsale at first said that she was not didn't know that she was going to reprise the role of Celine, but I believe maybe a year ago, so did say that she wouldn't mind playing Celine once again. Yeah, but I would like to see them actually put new characters. If you want to keep Celine in, you can keep Celine in as a mono, but I would love to see some new characters, new blood, if you will, in this series. And so there you have it. That is my review of the first one called Underworld. Like I said, it's more of like an introductory to the to this series. As we go on, I'll be focusing more on the movie aspects of each films in the franchise, but this is more of an introductory role, which talks about the whole entire film series and all the films, and kind of a little small breakdown of the first one. But we're really getting into more when I will go introduce to Underworld Evolution. So there you have it. That's my video for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, like, and share because it really, really helps out with that YouTube algorithm. I'm trying to get those views up. So keep watching these videos, please. Also, if you're new here, please hit that subscriber button and ring that notification bell. That way you'll be notified anytime when I put a new video such as this one. Once again, my name is Lamont Smith, better known as the Horror Miser Monty G. And always remember that horror rules. And I see you in my next video. I'm out.